Let's keep it simple, play our game, and get Ducks in deep. Hey everybody, I'm Zach Cavanagh, Anaheim Ducks reporter for the Sporting Tribune, and we've got plenty to talk about in Orange Country, specifically what's going on in the Anaheim Ducks goal crease, the split of the road back-to-backs over the weekend, and of course, answering your questions in our monthly mailbag. But first, Ducks in Deep is now available on Apple, Spotify, and most podcast platforms, thanks to our friends at the Believe Network. Hello to all of our audio-only listeners out there. We won't make this an ASMR channel, despite the audio component now being present. Follow Ducks in Deep to make sure new episodes are deposited straight into your audio feeds each and every week. Please rate and review on your platform of choice. It helps us out immensely. You can still subscribe to the Sporting Tribune on YouTube for all the latest Ducks media sessions, morning skate, post-game, practices, and everything in between, and continued video episodes of Ducks in Deep. These are not going anywhere. You can continue to read coverage of the Anaheim Ducks on thesportingtribune.com, where you can find my post-game notebooks and so much more at, again, thesportingtribune.com. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Zach Cav, that's at ZACHCAV, and on TikTok and Blue Sky at Zach Cav Sports for all the latest Ducks news, articles, tidbits, interaction. I'm there all the time. You can hit me up and we can talk Ducks outside of our monthly mailbags and these weekly episodes. If you've enjoyed that coverage on the Sporting Tribune, if you've enjoyed my coverage on social media and interacting with me, thanks to the access that I've gotten through this job, consider showing your support with a Patreon subscription at patreon.com/Zach Cavanagh as we continue to grow the Sporting Tribune and Ducks in Deep into the best Ducks coverage on the internet. Remember, the only way to guarantee your questions get answered in these monthly mailbags is to subscribe on Patreon and ask over there. Would love the support. Thankful for all the support everyone's already given over there. Subscribing on Patreon helps our efforts out to try to get back on the road for more road coverage of the Anaheim Ducks. I'm looking forward to getting back out on the road with the team, but the only way I can get there is with your support. Links for the Patreon and the travel fund are in the description below, and probably another one right up here. I can't be more thankful or grateful for, as we just passed through Thanksgiving, thankful, grateful for everyone that has subscribed on Patreon, and even those that have, put what they can into the travel fund. It means more to me than you could possibly know, as, we try to make this a more full-time and fully rounded out job covering the Anaheim Ducks. And, we have some questions about my job and my background from the mailbag this month, and we'll get into those for sure. But I can't be more thankful for everyone out there that's supported. And if you have any appreciation for my work and you have the ability to support in a financial way, I would greatly appreciate it. This is I do get compensation for the job. I'm not, just shaking my hand out here, but it is also a labor of love to some degree, but it is also my profession. I am a sports journalist. I have been for over a decade, and I'm trying to, carve out this niche here. And I feel like we've had good response. And if you've appreciated that, I appreciate you all. And let's continue to make this thing grow and get bigger and better as we head into the final month of this calendar year and continue this Anaheim Ducks season as it is rolling along. So now, let's get in deep. All right, everybody. So if you're listening on audio, this might sound a little different. If you're watching on YouTube, this might look a little different. I might look a little different. Framing might be a little off. The rest of this video and the intro was filmed on Tuesday. And I got a little behind in the editing, and I figured, I'll still put it together. And no matter what happened on Wednesday with the Utah game, that it shouldn't be that much of a detriment one way or the other, and I could still release the podcast, no harm, no foul. And then Wednesday happened, the worst home loss in Ducks franchise history. So I figured I have to put a little insert here on what happened there, and of course some updates from Wednesday morning. And some of this may contradict what I end up saying later in the episode, but just know that was recorded prior to Wednesday's morning skate and Wednesday's game. So first of all, the game itself, as Radko Gudas said, unacceptable. As Joel Quenneville said, first garbage can game of the season. You just throw that one away. Radko Gudas said he didn't want to burn the tape. It's something that they can learn from. But it is a game where not a lot went right. It's also something that, shout out to my compatriot Patrick, president of the Hockey News, read his breakdowns after every game, as well as everything we're doing at the Sporting Tribune. But Patrick's really smart on hockey. He's my seatmate there in the press box, and it's always good to have his very tactically eyed vision. But what Patrick said in his breakdown was that from the game flow, eye test, and underlying numbers, the game seemed a bit closer than it actually was. And I kind of felt that way as the game was happening. The game's kind of, the wheels are coming off. I'm starting to pay attention to other things, try to, get my story together so I don't have to linger too long on that one. And then, but stuff just keeps sort of happening. And after the Mason McTavish goal that gets called back, there is that surge that the Ducks had. And even when they were getting scored on, it wasn't like Utah was pounding them into the zone. It was just a situation of, again, like that happens so often with the Ducks, is that they make these critical mistakes that lead to these big chances, and those chances, without the stopgap of Lucas Dostal to save them, is going to go in, and that's no slight on Ville Husso, who lets in the 4 goals. Maybe one of them you consider a really bad goal, but the other ones were kind of soft over shoulder. But even then, it's a good shot. But the other ones are defensive breakdowns. And poor Vyacheslav Butiets, who makes his NHL debut, he's just dealing with bouncing pucks and just chaos around him. But the thing that we talked about with Dostal before, his great asset is being able to anticipate the play. So even on those odd man rushes, or you've seen Dostal defend 2-on-0s this season, he just knows how to read the play and know where to be. So he can... That's why the goal saved above expected. That's sort of the reason that stat exists, is for things that Dostal does. So, I don't want to blame that too much on the goaltenders. And Radko Gudas didn't either. He said that the team as a whole needs to tighten up. I asked him specifically, with the guys kind of changing in and out, do you feel the need to tighten that up? And he just, as a defensive unit, and he says everybody needs to tighten it up. He was also saying that they were going to get their work boots on and get right back to work tomorrow, being today. They didn't have a practice today. Part of that, I think, is CBA mandate. They have to have an off day here, and you have the weird schedule, again, the compacted days. Sunday's an early Sunday game, so there's no morning skate, which means they probably definitely want to have practice on Saturday. So they take the day off today. They are doing their charity event today also, so maybe it's just a good day to... That game was terrible. There's nothing to really pull out of it from like a positive angle of, hey, you know what? We didn't do this right, but let's work on it. And you get that day to flush and just have a day with your family, a day helping the community. And I think that may be a beneficial thing for them in the long run. And like Gudas said too, he said that he didn't want to burn the tape, that there were things that they want to learn from the game. But I think what they learned from the game is just, you cannot play like that ever again. Because the other thing Gudas said was, everything they did was just uncharacteristic of what they do normally. They weren't protecting the blue line. They weren't using their speed. Pucks that they normally move forward, they were bringing back. Nothing seemed congruous with what they've done in the past. So disappointing that the Ducks weren't able to pull this effort forward, pull the effort that they had in St. Louis, which I get into here later in the podcast. But, I asked Joel Quenneville specifically, this team has been very good about bouncing back after losses. And is it a little disappointing that you have a devastating loss in Chicago, you bounce back immediately against St. Louis, and you're unable to roll that in the next day? And this is where these real tests come for the Ducks, is, again, how they respond. What do they do? This is a young team still. For all the upward trajectory we've seen, for all the highs of the offense, for all the jump up of these young players, they are still young players. And there are going to be bumps in the road, big ones, like Wednesday night against Utah, that they need to learn from, and how they handle that going forward, and not let that spiral into a 2-3 game losing streak, and not let these other teams catch up to them in a very, very tight Western Conference Pacific Division race. So just a short note on all of that. It couldn't go unremarked upon with how tough that was. And it's not going to get any easier. Washington comes in after their own 7-goal performance in San Jose last night. They get another heated rivalry rematch with Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks on Sunday. So big games here, not necessarily just big games, but big tests for this team to show their mettle again and rebound and come back. And then quick note on the injury front. I talk a little bit about it's, the first thing I talked about in the podcast, the goaltending situation with, Lucas Dostal out 2 to 3 weeks. He was on the ice for a little bit at morning skate yesterday. Joel Quenneville said he's on course for his 2 to 3 weeks. So if that's 2 weeks on the early side, he can come back as early as next week, and the Ducks, can hang on with that. They don't have any back-to-backs until that third week, and maybe that's just one where I was surprised that they let Vyacheslav Butias in the game. I kind of thought that he was going to be there as an insurance policy. And maybe you don't want to overrun Husso knowing that he's going to be playing a lot of these games over the next week or week and a half. But the fact that they put him in the game, maybe despite not being the best, result, maybe that gives you the thought of, okay, well, maybe they're comfortable enough to throw him in, on the back-to-back. There's also unconfirmed reports that Calle Klang might be back with a goal soon. And if that's the case, do they want to work him back in down there, or does he come immediately back up to Anaheim to be the emergency backup in that situation? Anyway, all of this is, in play because Peter Mrazek was the latest goalie injury. And that's the one that we were sort of waiting on. Quenneville didn't have a hard figure. He said he was sort of estimating that it is a 2 to 3 week timeline for Mrazek, which, if the Ducks don't tighten up defensively, 2 to 3 weeks without their top two goalies becomes a bit of an issue. But if Dostal is on course and they just need to survive this week, I don't know that there's going to be any moves ended up being made, because again, you got to give up something to get something. And what is that something really worth? 1 week of goaltending relief, and then inserting somebody into your now hierarchy that you've dealt with all the organizational changes. And again, some of what I'm saying may come back up again later in the podcast, but I just wanted to make sure I get this out there, as part of this, the day after, again, the worst home loss in franchise history. Flush it. You got to move on. As Joel Quenneville said, what is the positive? When we asked what's the positive out of last night, it's over, and they're moving forward. So it's over. It was bad. Nothing to really take out of it other than it'll be in the Ducks record books as a black mark, but hopefully one that ultimately is unimportant in the long string of what the season portends. So worst home loss in franchise history, flushed. Peter Mrazek out 2 to 3 weeks. Dostal on course. Mikael Granlund also on track to come back either at the end of this homestand. He participated in his first team skate on Wednesday. So he can come back at the end of this homestand, maybe the start of the next road trip. But he's very close to getting there. And as we've seen after losses, I anticipate plenty of lineup changes when we get to morning skate on Friday. So follow all the channels that have been mentioned here already and the Sporting Tribune for the latest updates on the Ducks and how they progress. And now back to older, less hoarse Zach for the rest of this episode of Ducks in Deep. Where to begin? Where we are with the Anaheim Ducks. I feel like the games themselves, while important, have become secondary to the storylines that are developing in the Ducks goal crease over the last week, and particularly across the organization over the last month or so. So let's start there. Lucas Dostal out 2 to 3 weeks with an upper body injury. He was at the injury was announced last Wednesday when he wasn't there for the morning skate. He was in practice on Tuesday, as far as I can remember. I didn't see anything weird happen to him then. I know he was in practice on that Tuesday. And then he wasn't there for a morning skate on Wednesday. And the Ducks had to, it seemed like they were caught off guard, obviously, because Ville Husso wasn't in Anaheim at that point. He was with the Gulls in Tucson. Had to be recalled. And so they ran with Peter Budaj, goaltending coach, got some reps in at the morning skate there last Wednesday before Peter Mrazek made his start against the Canucks that night. So unclear exactly what happened to Dostal. You might remember that he had an unfortunate incident with the stairs in the preseason that knocked him out for a couple days. That was a lower body injury. It was very minor. It was more precautionary than anything else to keep him off the ice at the time. And now unclear what this is. When we asked Wednesday morning about it, I thought I heard Quenneville kind of slip and say yesterday. But then when we asked, I believe on Friday was when he gave us this quote about when Husso came in and played well, that they had to make a surprise change in net on Wednesday morning. So I think it may have been something that happened either overnight. This is not the place for rampant speculation. That is not what I'm going to do here. But it would not be the first NHL player in the last week to have an unfortunate incident happen at home, as we've seen with various cooking incidents, barbecues, team dinners. I don't think that's what happened with Dostal. I've seen him, in the locker room hallways since. Doesn't look like there's anything abnormal. No bandages on his hands for burns or anything. So again, not to get too far down that rabbit hole, just unclear what happened there. But he officially went on IR on Monday, after Peter Mrazek then went down on Sunday, just pushing off the post. You don't want to think the worst, but that does certainly look similar to a groin type injury, which for anyone that's followed the Anaheim Ducks, that the goalie that the Ducks traded and got Peter Mrazek in return for, John Gibson, had his fair share of lower body injuries like that. So a little bit of PTSD flashback there, and truly just unfortunate, to have these guys go down back-to-back weeks when they had been playing well. Mrazek had actually been playing really well, I thought, since his couple starts that were obviously ones to forget. But Ville Husso came in, unfortunately got the loss in that game. They still only have him registered for one shot against, which I've talked to some people there on Twitter about that. He clearly faced more than one shot. It's so odd. But Husso is now taking over the starting reins. Mrazek was officially listed as day-to-day with a lower body. The Ducks were flying back today on Tuesday, so I assume he will get a better look and we'll have a better idea of Mrazek's timeline when we show up to morning skate on Wednesday. So we'll see how all that plays out. But with Dostal out for 2 to 3, you hope that Mrazek stays as a day-to-day injury, and that you can hopefully have him back in the future, because the Ducks are also without their number 4 goaltender in the system. Calle Klang last month left the San Diego Gulls on a personal leave of absence. Again, personal reasons, unclear what's going on with Calle. Whatever it is, we hope the best for him. He's a really good kid. Enjoyed talking to him at the rookie camp and also in the preseason. But it's the Ducks last season, Ducks and Gulls, got decimated in their goalie depth. Dostal wasn't out. I think he may have been out for a little bit there. If I can't remember exactly, but Gibson obviously went in and out. Oscar Danks came up at one point. There was the James Reimer to start off the season. Then Klang got injured, and Tomas Sukanek was out for the year. Over the previous summer, and Butiets had to be. It was a mess, and that's why they signed Ville Husso to this 2-year deal to back up. To make sure that there was a quality goaltender down in San Diego, or if the Ducks were in need, that they had somebody to call up. And somehow it's happening all over again. Of the Ducks' 6 goaltenders they have in their North American systems, 3 of them are now injured. And 3 of them, and you have the top 2 and your number 4. So your 3rd string goaltender, Ville Husso, is now the starter in Anaheim. Your 5th string goaltender, Vyacheslav Butiets, is now the backup in Anaheim for now. And Tomas Sukanek is now your starter in San Diego, despite only having a few games down in ECHL Tulsa and not having started a game for the Gulls quite yet, even through all this mishap over the last month. So where does that leave us? Well, it means really the Ducks are kind of in a tough spot. You're going to ask a lot more from the defensive effort, and I thought we saw that over the last couple games as the Ducks, they only limited Chicago to 18 shots, and the goals that they did give up were the one problem with the defense is that when they let up a chance, it is a top chance, which we'll certainly be monitoring here over the next stretch. But we'll talk about some of that when we get to the games. What they do in net, and I know we have some mailbag questions about this, but it will all be dependent on what Mrazek's timeline is. If Mrazek is also out for similarly a 2 to 3 week timeline, I don't know how comfortable. I think the Ducks are comfortable enough with Ville Husso, but the question then becomes, when you look at the schedule, there are a pair of back-to-backs in 2 weeks where the Ducks finish off their East Coast road trip, New York Rangers one night, Columbus Blue Jackets the next night. Then they come home, and they, funnily enough, play a back-to-back with the Columbus Blue Jackets being the home, 2 home games in a row. The Blue Jackets are the second half of that back-to-back as well. You wonder if they would be comfortable throwing Vyacheslav Butiets into the net for a back-to-back situation. If they know that, hey, Dostal is either going to come back that week or right thereafter, and you just hold on and if you take a loss, you take a loss, but you don't want to expend assets to get a veteran backup, or, there's guys out there, I've seen names like Laurent Bossois or Chris Drager or even James Reimer again. I don't know that the Ducks want to do that, because now if you bring those guys back, once everyone is healthy or back in the team, now you're going to have an extra goaltender, and you're also going to have to deal with the waivers of it all through all of this. Like Husso was able to come up without waivers because of the injury situation. If he plays well, what happens when he has to get sent back down? Butiets is fine. He'll get through. He's waiver exempt. What happens to Ville Husso? What happens to if you brought in one of these other netminders? What happens? So a lot of questions, and unfortunately not a lot of answers right now. I do think they are very happy with Ville Husso. This is part of the reason why they signed him in the first place. So we'll reassess on Wednesday and see where this team is, or where Peter Mrazek is going into this. And you also wonder, what is the actual severity of Dostal's injury? Is it closer to the 2-week side? Is it closer to the 3-week side? I think that also plays into what they will end up doing. But you also don't want to overwork your number one goaltender in Dostal. So we'll see what happens there. But again, a lot of ifs, buts. But as I mentioned, this is going to be a real test for the defensive side of the game. And I think we saw especially an improved effort in St. Louis on Monday night. The Chicago game, as I said on socials afterwards, just a disaster. You cannot let up a 3. Like, it's been hard enough for the Ducks to score the first goal of the game. I think it's now 16 out of 26 games that they've been scored on first. And so you get the first goal of the game. You get the first 2 goals of the game in the first 47 seconds. You get a 3-0 lead 10 minutes in. And yet the power play bug bit them. Chicago scored on the power play to get closer. Connor Bedard out on the rush. And then once you get tied, once I was able to, full disclosure, I was not able to watch the game live when I called it a disaster in terms of the Ducks blowing that game in Chicago. But on the surface, you lose a goaltender, you lose a 3-goal lead, disaster. Looking at it again, yes, it was bad enough to lose a 3-goal lead. I really think that called back goal was a demoralizer. Alex Killorn thinks he scores shorthanded to go up 4-3 and kind of resalvage things. And I think the Ducks had started to play better at the start of that third period. And then you get the wind taken out of your sails a little bit. And then just a weird mistake where Connor Bedard is somehow behind all the defense, and Alex Killorn, trying to avoid the forecheck, loses the puck off his stick straight through the defenseman right to Connor Bedard, and Ville Husso, what is he supposed to do there? So just ultimately an odd game that I wouldn't linger on. And I don't think the Ducks did, because they went back the next night and had an exemplary effort in St. Louis. Again, they score first. That goal gets negated by a St. Louis score. Pavel Mintyukov, with his second goal in 3 games, gets the Ducks ahead, and they don't look back. They played a thorough game. They played a much cleaner defensive game. Yes, there is no Connor Bedard on the St. Louis Blues, but I think the penalty kill was much improved. I want to touch on that too. Penalty kill was improved, and the defensive effort was great. Only 23 shots against for 22 saves for Ville Husso. Again, only 18 shots allowed against Chicago as well. I feel like, you don't want to negate the Ducks' rush ability, but they clearly have been talking about this offense or this defensive effort, because it's kind of a conundrum. You watch the games, and I think there is an improvement on the defensive scheme of things. However, there are big gaffes that just sort of lead to problems. My point that I made on Twitter and kind of had a back and forth with some people about was the net front coverage, which the teams in the past week leading up, the Vancouver game, the LA game, a lot of action in and around the net, because the way the Ducks have played, they were pretty loose in their defensive net front, and they would leave guys in front early to go try to block shots. And all that's well and good if you block the shot and challenge the shooter. I think I understand the methodology there. What happened was they weren't covering, they weren't blocking the shots. And so the guys that were in front were now getting these tip opportunities. You saw it on Chicago's opening power play goal where, loose coverage in front, guy gets tipped in the net. And also the rebounds and things like that. And all of that kind of played in. So you look at then going forward, I know I'm kind of all over the place. A little under the weather today, so we're fighting through it. Quenneville had made the point where the defense has looked better, generally speaking. However, when they do let up chances, it feels like nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden it's a grade A chance where guys are playing tight, they're playing in their zones, they're playing in their lanes, they've got it, but they can't clear the puck, and then they're stuck. And then all of a sudden they're out of position, and it's a tip, and it's a rebound, and it's in the net. So what does that mean? Or what's the fallout from that? Well, they clearly tightened down on that against St. Louis, where, hat tip to Patrick, president of Hockey News, for noting this a little bit more eloquently of, yes, they're still playing a little loose in the net front, but they are at least lingering with the guy in front a little longer before going out to challenge the shot. And I think that helps in terms of just the timing of everything. So there's little adjustments that need to be made here and there. The other thing that we saw in the penalty kill was Jackson Lacombe was credited with only 4 seconds of penalty kill time. The Ducks had 6 power plays to kill off against the Blues. Again, the penalty's still a problem, but they killed off 6 penalties. Jackson Lacombe, your number 1 defenseman, your ice time leader, your power play leader, going into the game, your PK time leader, was not involved in that unit. Your leaders in ice time were Jacob Trouba, who's been there the whole time, and Pavel Mintyukov, who has had just a marvelous week since being reinserted into the lineup. He's not going anywhere. So you're seeing some shifts. You're seeing this team having to learn night to night. You're seeing this team having to find its way through these games now as the season develops. Teams play them differently. Everyone starts to play a little bit differently as the season goes on, and they're finding their way through it. When it comes to finding their way through it, we've seen the thing that's now the most impressive to me, and we've seen it, shift to shift, period to period, where the team has come back from these deficits. We talked about the goals being let in and such. But Monday was impressive to me for just how thorough the bounce back was. Losing a game like you do on Sunday in Chicago could be devastating. Losing a game like you did against Vancouver, again, a team that is lower than you in the standings, could have been a real killer that could send them into a spiral, especially with your goaltending situation. But instead what happened was, against the Kings, they gritted out an effort to respond and not lose back-to-back games. Against St. Louis, they came out firing, and they came out with a complete, really focused effort to not lose back-to-back games. That is impressive. Yes, there was the 3-game losing streak that everyone pointed to as, the sky was falling. But when you look at the course of the season, the Ducks have only lost back-to-back games 3 times. That's it. You have the, 2 back-to-back instances on the 3-game losing streak. You have I'm trying to remember now. I have to pull it up. I thought I had it to my tongue. It was Carolina and then losing in overtime to Chicago, early in the season. That is pretty impressive that they've now staved off back-to-back losses after almost every loss. They've staved off a back-to-back loss 7 times now, 6 times. That is the stuff that changes a losing franchise into a winning franchise. You nip those losing streaks in the bud, and you don't let them linger. You don't let them turn into 6-game losing streaks. You don't let them tumble you down the standings. And that is even more important when you look at this division and this conference. put a note in my notebook against the Kings, and I'm going to keep that up for when we see more Pacific Division teams or even playoff opponents like we will on Wednesday with Utah. It is impossibly tight because of all these overtime games and these loser points that are going back and forth. The Ducks are 4-2 in the division, but 3 of those 4 wins have come in overtime. So while they've gained 8 of 12 divisional points, they've also given away 7 of 12 divisional points. And when that happens, you have to respond in these games. You lose a divisional game in Vancouver, a game that you should have won against a team you should have beat. You playing another team that's trying to knock you off the top of that division against the Kings 2 nights later, your rival, and they came back and they fought through that game and got the shootout win. That is impressive. You go against a Chicago team, which is coming for your spot as well, not in the division, but you are both young teams on the rise that are, the Chicago's maybe making a more impressive jump than the Ducks in terms of they should be further down than they are. But here they are. You're fighting with them. You lose that game. So you go up against a Blues team that made the playoffs last year after a strong charge, but they are lesser this year. And so you feel like, well, you can't, if you lose this one, that's a bad mark, and they don't lose it. They come back and they win. Not come back, but they come back from the night before. That is impressive to me. The ability to continually build winning habits into this franchise. And that some of that comes from Quenneville. Some of that comes from these veterans that have been brought in. And some of that is just these young players stepping up, because you see it in that game where Mason McTavish scores the first goal. Pavel Mintyukov, second goal. Leo Carlsson, the third goal. And Chris Kreider with the empty net, but assisted by Carlsson. Beckett Seneca assisted on McTavish's goal. That's an 8-game point streak for Beckett Seneca. Ties a Ducks rookie record held by some guy, Paul Correa. Leo Carlsson, 7-game point streak. Second such 7-game point streak this season. Only the second player in the league this year to have 2 point streaks of 7 or more games. That is what is impressive to me at this point in the season. It's not necessarily the tactics. It's not necessarily the run of play. It is, again, it's all the mental side of the game as this team learns to be a winning team. And whether that's making these adjustments to the defensive scheme, whether that's guys stepping up into the penalty kill like Pavel Mintyukov has, coming off of the healthy scratches, coming in and excelling. Ian Moore came back off his healthy scratch run to an 11-7 lineup, which is, again, a message to this team by Quenneville, a button pushed correctly of Ryan Strome, you're a veteran, you're playing well. Well, you didn't play well enough last game, so we're going to bench you because this Sunday's game is unacceptable. And then you put in these young guys that come in, they step up, and they overcome. So I know I'm rambling on here, but that is what is impressive to me now. And now they come home for a 3-game homestand. Utah, a team that, again, is a huge game when it comes to the playoff implications. Fitting that it's on national television. The 2 national TV games for the Ducks this year have already been well picked with the Colorado game, this Utah game. They're going to be playing Vegas later in the year. That'll be fun. But yeah, it's an impressive rebound for the Ducks over these last few games. Vancouver to LA, Chicago to St. Louis, and they're figuring out how to be that next level type team. And that is what is impressing me about this team that is still here on December 2nd on top of the Pacific Division. Let's get into the mailbag section here. First episode of the month, which means we open up the Ducks in Deep monthly mailbag for December. As always, to guarantee your questions get answered, you must subscribe to our Patreon, where you can subscribe to the proper tier, ask your questions on the post when I put it out each week, or each month, I should say, and guarantee a full and robust answer as much as I can give. And then, we open the mailbag to everyone across the socials. But the only way to guarantee an answer and to guarantee a full answer is through the Ducks in Deep Patreon, patreon.com/Zach Cavanagh. So we'll go to one of our loyal Patreon subscribers, ask a question every month, and I appreciate you for that. Doug, who had 2 questions as it pertained to practices. First, what are the Ducks doing to work on faceoffs in practice on off days, and why is this such a pain point for this team year after year, 29th in the league as of this writing? Funnily enough, I happened to ask Leo Carlson about this. I just wrapped up my normal taped interview with him, and I put the microphone away just to talk to him and say, hey, I wanted to ask you about faceoffs and what is happening, what are you seeing, what are you feeling? And he made the point that other people have made of, you just got to take more faceoffs, and that's the only way to get better. And, they do it in practice. It's not a concentrated thing, but when all the team drills are done, everybody always, they do the final whistle and everybody kind of skates to their corners to do some final drill stuff and get off when they feel like getting off the ice. And you see all the centers, whether it's Leo or Mason, they line up at one of the face-off dots and they just drop the puck, and just bam, bam, bam. Working on those face-offs as much as they can. But that's still just so different from like an in-game face-off taking. And what Leo pointed out, and others across the league have said this, I think the thing with the Ducks is that they're just simply a very young team. You look at who was doing well on face-offs at any point during this year, and it was Mikael Granlund. It's when they've put in Chris Kreider to take some of the face-offs on power plays. I thought it was, I noticed in the Kings game, Leo had won an offensive zone faceoff. I don't know if it was right before the game tying goal or not, but it was in that sequence. But it is a thing that young players just aren't as good at faceoffs, whether it's their strength, whether it's their, savvy, their veteran know-how. The only way to get better at faceoffs is to take more in game. And I know that's not necessarily a sufficient answer. You want there to be ways to fix them quickly, but the only way to get better at it is to do it. And I think, with both Leo and Mason in particular as your top two centers, that's the only thing you're going to get out of them, is they just have to do more. So, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but you can look back at them. And I know that Sidney Crosby struggled with faceoffs. Patrice, early in his career, Patrice Bergeron, Ajay Kopitar, all these guys did not come into the league to dominate the dot immediately. Maybe it was after only 2 or 3 years, but it's not. It's a very specific skill that you have to just get the reps at. The other thing I would say, and I've always thought this, and I know there are hockey people that sort of agree with me here, that the actual face-off numbers don't tell the story. Like, yes, it is about winning the face-off is step one of controlling the puck. But there's plenty of times where guys win the face-off and then are immediately forechecked and lose the puck. So who wins that face-off? Is it the team that then forechecked and won the puck back? Or is the guy who won the draw back? I think it's more about the execution after the fact of getting the puck back. And I think you're seeing a good deal of that. But when it comes to actual face-off prowess, it just takes time. And that's frustrating, as the team continues to grow, but it will be something that grows in time. It is a situation where I wish Ryan Getzlaf was still with the organization in a major way, because I specifically remember it was Cutter Gautier's first rookie developmental camp with the Ducks, and Getzy was there as a assistant coach for the week. And Cutter Gauthier at the time still had maybe a thought of playing center in this league. Stayed for quite a while after one of the practices just to do faceoffs against Ryan Getzlaf. And if there's any way to get better at faceoffs, it's probably to do that. But the Ducks don't have a guy like that in-house right now. And again, the only way to get better at it is to do them. So they do skills drills with them, but I don't know if it's a major focus. It's not like they line up on the dots and go for it. So I don't know if that's what you want to hear, Doug, but that is sort of the long and short of it. Is young. Why are the Ducks not as good of it? Young players. And as far as year over year, some of the guys they brought in just weren't really, even the veterans were not great faceoff takers. So it's a very specific skill that some guys have, some guys don't, and you need to grow into it. The other question that Doug had here was, the PK is still not great, 27th as of this writing, and assistant coach Ryan McGill has had such great success coaching that unit in the past. Where's the disconnect between his coaching and the execution on the ice? So again, touched on that a little bit. They've already switched up the penalty kill defensive units, as of last game. Also, Leo Carlson and Troy Terry had less PK time than usual, despite their shorthanded goal prowess early in the year. I think you saw those guys maybe pushing a bit too hard for those shorties, and I think that sort of got them out of whatever the system is. What I'm seeing when the Ducks are on the PK is I feel like they're still a little passive. And I feel like when they've been successful, they're pressuring. And you see that in spots during these games, but I think they're still working on it. Quenneville told us, at the dawn of the season, when we had asked about the special teams units coming out of the preseason, he said that they will every single one of them will be a work in progress for the next 82 games. So I think that is definitely the case. I think there's also just some habits that need to be kind of worked out of these guys. You see them, you see when they've been coached up a bit because they do change their focus, but every so often they slip into something that they haven't been doing. And I think that's the disconnect when it comes to coaching and execution. It's a matter of beating out those old habits and getting into the new ones and simply executing. I think if I were to say anything from a coaching standpoint, I would like to see them be a bit more aggressive. But it also, when we talk about the guys being left in front, I think that's my biggest pain point when it comes to the power or the penalty kill. Lucas Dostal, there's these high level stats that have been reported that his lowest percentage of saves were on tips. And when you're leaving these guys wide open in front and you're not engaging with them, these guys are more free for tips and deflections and rebounds and things like that. So I don't think that there's been a lot of just straight clean beats. It's been those plays around the net that end up, being scored on the power play. And so I'd like to see a bit more engagement there. And again, you saw that with the guys sort of lingering and then jumping off, like I had already mentioned. But I think there's constant tinkering going on there because there are good nights, there are bad nights. And St. Louis was a good night, and we'll see what those changes portend as they go forward. But thank you for those questions, Doug, on the Patreon. Only two other ones on the Patreon. We'll go quick through some of these because unfortunately I just don't have great answers for either. Mitch on Patreon asked, with anime night coming up, that's Friday against the Capitals, do any of the players have a favorite anime? That I don't know. It's not something that comes up too often around the locker room. I'll dig around. I've tried to ask guys about their watching habits in the past. I'm a big movie guy. I am an anime guy. I do have my favorites. But it doesn't always come up when we're asking about the power plays and such. I'm not on the plane with them. I'm not in the hotel rooms with them. I don't know what they're watching on a day-to-day. But these guys will pick long-running series to watch. They are more TV guys than movie guys in my experience, but I have not heard their anime preferences. My favorite anime of all time, from an enjoyment standpoint, it's Dragon Ball. Can't beat a classic. Also, of course, Attack on Titan. And what did I just finish? I don't know. I do watch a fair amount of anime, but I'm not deep on it. Like, I'm pretty surface level. Oh, Jujutsu Kaisen. We're waiting for season 3. I'm excited for that. Coming up in January, I think. That'll be fun for everybody. Good timing for anime night. Ticket package where you can buy a Naruto headband. Those will be a big hit. It's unfortunate that it's not a full arena giveaway, honestly. Also on Patreon, Cynthia Simers. Do you watch the PWHL? If so, who do you think is the team to watch this season? I watch the PWHL when I have a moment. I love the fact that it's on YouTube. I think that is great for the sport. Unfortunately, just I get so in deep with the Ducks and hockey, the Ducks in the NHL season. I don't end up watching or not watching. Like I said, I do watch when I can just throw it on, but I don't watch as intently as I would like. I do enjoy that the league is thriving. I love that they're talking about more expansion. I think Southern California could thrive with a team, whether they put them in, I don't think they put them in LA because the arena is probably too big. As far as arena size, you think I mean, the pond would be nice, but I think it would probably be Ontario if they were going to pick an arena to be in this market. Um, I would love if they were able to get an Anaheim team and make that the Southern California representative of the PWHL. I think it would thrive here, and I would really enjoy that. But I for my time watching it, I've really liked watching the Minnesota Frost. I love some of their players, and I've also really liked. Hillary Knight has always been my favorite women's player. She's on Seattle now. So excited to see how that Seattle team does. I'm a little disappointed, again, in all the team names that they give these things. I think all women's leagues could spare for better team names. They don't have to be singular entities like Seattle Torrents or Minnesota Frost, Boston Fleet. Like some plurals. You can just call a team the Hawks. It's fine. Or you can call them the Eagles, whatever. Like Vancouver Golden Eyes is a good one though. But I also wish when it comes to the jerseys, I don't like that these new teams only go with the word marks. They have logos. Put them on the front. But I'm happy for the PWHL. Don't watch as much of it as, or not as intently as maybe I would like to, but I do catch the game when I can, thanks to the YouTube for now. So that's great. And of course, if they were able to actually break in to the SoCal market, I would be right there on the forefront of reporting for that team. That'd be a fun one. So those are our Patreon questions. Thank you to everyone for subscribing on Patreon. Again, the only way to guarantee your questions get answered in this mailbag and in full as much as I can on patreon.com/Zach Cavanagh, ZachCavanagh. Let's hit the rest of our questions. We'll do them kind of quick-ish. Here we go. We'll go to Instagram, where we got some responses to my Instagram story. Some of these have been touched on elsewhere, but at Andrew Uno 84 asked, do you think Verbeek makes any moves in the goalie market to address the depth? Like I said, I think it's up to the Mrazek timeline. We'll know more about that on Wednesday morning, and we'll have a better answer there. But we'll see. At Shanat, I'm so sorry. At Shanadara Riel. I'm so sorry. I've seen a lot of proposed rosters for the Team USA Olympic team, none with Kreider. Is CK a consideration? I don't think so. I think Kreider has been awesome, and I think that they want some of that veteran jam. But it also feels like they're in that mode of transferring over to the new faces of USA Hockey. I would almost wonder, Cutter slowed down a little bit here, but I would love Cutter to get a look at Team USA. But the forward group is so deep. Jackson Lacombe, despite being part of the orientation camp, has probably played his way out of any early consideration for Team USA. Kreider has been a valued member of USA Hockey for years, but I don't, he does bring something specific, and I think if they're in the mode of, building the right team, that they might consider him, but I don't think he makes the roster ultimately, just because it seems like they are very much into this next generation of USA Hockey. And, they're already throwing some bones to some veterans, and from what I understand. So, I would love Kreider to get a shot, but especially with how hot his start has been. But I don't know that he gets there. Let's see. At Aaron47AK, do you see the Ducks trading for a player like Rasmus Andersson to bolster the D? I don't think there's any moves that are going to be made to bolster the defense. I think that they like the young group they have. I think they like how they're improving. If there's anything that's going to be traded for on this team, it is, maybe a goaltender, depending on how things go in the next couple days, or, more scoring power. And that seems odd to say with how well the Ducks have scored this season, but I don't think Rasmus Andersson is in the plans. They don't need another defender. Like, yes, Gudis is in the last year of a contract. Jacob Trouba in the last year of a contract, although I still believe Trouba will end up being re-signed. But you still have Luno and Solberg and all these guys that are coming up, not to mention these young kids like Zellweger and Minchikov that are really shining right now. So I don't I don't think there's any reason to bolster the D, and I don't know that Rasmus Andersson really changes the complexion of this team beyond that. So I don't think that's something that's going to happen. And last one here from Instagram, at Sean Black Murr. How did you get your job with the Ducks? Love your work. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to give you the same answer I give my family. I don't work with the Ducks. I cover the Ducks. I got my job. I've been a sports reporter in Southern California in Orange County specifically for over a decade now. Did a lot of freelancing with the Orange County Register, covering high schools for a while. I wrote for the San Clemente Times, Dana Point Times, and Capistrano Dispatch as my first full-time job in the business. Did that for 6.5 years or so before I unfortunately got laid off over, May of 24 now. And right when that happened, the Sporting Tribune that I write for now had started to get a hold in the local space and was getting accredited with people. And I knew a guy that freelanced with me at the Register that wrote Angels for the Sporting Tribune. And he had been asked by them as their Ducks writer was leaving, like, do you know hockey? And he said, no, I don't. But I do know somebody that really knows the hockey and really knows the Ducks. And that's how I got involved. He had mentioned me. Stuff didn't go. There wasn't any further conversations. And then training camp last year had started. And I knew that there was this opportunity. I was trying to really grind and send out all these applications and try to get, back into a full-time employment somewhere. When I was watching training camp videos, and this is, again, no disrespect to, the guys that I work with now on the beat, whether it's Derek Lee at the Hockey News or Eric Stevens at the Athletic. But I saw a video of Ducks training camp, and there were 2 microphones in the shot. And I think it might have been Mason McTavish. It was a star player for the team. And I had the thought of, like, this is a major sports franchise in a major market, and there's 2 people at most, and one of them I know being a team employee, so only one outside microphone involved in these scrums, for a team that's trying to bounce back and improve and all this stuff. And I said, that really just can't stand. As somebody that has been an observer of this team for a long time, and I'll get into that with another question on the mailbag, it seemed kind of crazy to me that was the case. And, this has always been, covering the Ducks is a dream job for me in so many ways. And so I knew that there was this opportunity that could get me, to do real coverage of the team, to be in the locker room and not only help out fans of the team by covering the team, but also help me out in terms of, one of the reasons I had been turned down from some of these jobs was all my experience came at the high school level. And so they wanted better clips from me. And it's like, you can't tell the work you can just see that I could port over the work, but I understand they want something more tangible. So I got in touch with Arash Markazi over here at the Sporting Tribune, who's been a name in Southern California sports journalism for quite some time, LA Times, ESPN, etc. And the interview went well, and I got, I had to go through the vetting process with the Ducks, and I got accredited, and I started going to every game. And the first game was October 22nd of last year, and haven't looked back. I've put all of my time and effort into making this as good as possible, and we're doing more here with the videos, the podcast, and everything else. Just trying to continually grow this and make this bigger and better for everyone that watches this team and follows this team, and also for my own career, trying to make this bigger and better. So I appreciate the kind words of people saying that they love my work. I love interacting with everyone at the rink, at Honda Center, at the practice rink. Again, everyone on Patreon. It means the world to me that you all have liked my coverage and are supporting me in this way. And I'm excited to keep rolling with this. So that's how I got my job covering the Ducks. I don't work for the team, but I do work alongside the crack social media and PR staff for the Ducks. Shout out to Tyler, Steve, Alex Gilchrist, Alexis Downey, and the crew. Um, and of course, everyone else that's on the beat, the regulars, Derek Lee and Patrick, president of the Hockey News, and of course, Andrew Knoll of the Register, and the incomparable Eric Stevens of the Athletic, who he would like to be an everyday guy with the Ducks, but he's covering the Ducks, Kings, and Sharks for the Athletic, and so much more. So shout out to the GOAT, Iceman, Eric Stevens. Let's go over to Reddit, where we've got a couple here. First question was from Quackshot about the goalie injury situation. Kind of talked about it. I don't think they're going to get a stopgap. I think they're going to just run with Husso for now, unless Mrazek is longer term. Then I think that they might want to bolster that up a little bit. And I don't think that they're going to trade for any defenseman right now. From Drac, you're always very close to the locker room. Do you feel any change in the atmosphere now that everything works out as planned? How are they handling the negative results, in your opinion? On the ice, they seem resilient enough, but it must sting to lose to Chicago and Vancouver in such fashion. So we talked about this in the opening statement a little bit. It is impressive how much this does not stick with them. Under the Greg Cronin era, when this team would lose, some of those locker rooms, you could just feel the vibe was down. When we go into the locker room, we talk to these guys, even after a tough game, like, the Vancouver game, as you mentioned, at home, we had Jackson Lacombe, and I thought that Jackson, was unfortunately at the wrong end of some of those net mouth plays. His partner, Drew Hellison, was right there. And I was trying to latch onto why the starts, why couldn't they get these first goals to go in, and what was going on with the defensive structure, the PK. And he had a great attitude about it. Like, it was a little frustrating for me because some of the answers were, well, that's just how it happens sometimes. That's just how it happens sometimes. And you sort of, water off their back. But also, it's impressive that it doesn't get through. It doesn't ding them. And I think you're seeing that with the confidence of these guys, confidence of Leo Carlson, confidence of Mason McTavish, confidence of everyone in the goaltending. I think Radko Gudas has been a great leader, insulating some of the defensive guys. Pavel Mintyukov had the whole situation with the potential trade rumors and all that. And I asked Radko about it, and he was a stand-up leader and defended Mintyukov and said, in here, we're all brothers and we've got each other's backs. And I think all of that is good in the room, but I think it still stems from the top with Joel Quenneville. Win, lose, otherwise, he has been a very even-keel guy to deal with. And Cronin wore his heart on his sleeve a little bit. When they would lose and it was frustrating, we got the I don't knows, and that was very frustrating. But it was clear a thing of like, this hurt him. He's beaten up about it and he wants to fix it. But Quenneville has always been clear and even, and we go to these games and you see these amazing comebacks and these huge results, and you're like, wow, coach, what did you think of that? Yeah, it was a great game. And then, he's not taken over by the good emotions. He's not brought down by the bad emotions. The Vancouver game was maybe the most clearly disappointed that we've seen Quenneville, in talking to him. But I think that responded with the LA game. And unfortunately, we weren't able to talk to him in Chicago because they're on the road. But I would have loved to have seen what his reaction was there. But they bounce right back. And I think that resiliency is what we're seeing. And I think that's a very important thing that this team has developed, whether it's just Quenneville coming down or whether it's the players all dragging themselves up. Like, no, we are taking control of this situation now and we are moving forward. It's been great to see. And then lastly, on the Reddit from Checksum, hey, Zach, love your coverage so far. Thank you, Checksum. Being able to hear from the players after morning skate and postgame has made this season feel special. I was wondering if you could go into your sports fan history. What professional sports did you follow as a kid? What about now as an adult? Did you play any sports growing up? There's more in there, but we'll start there. My sports fan history. I don't, very clear that it is, you're not supposed to be a fan on the beat. And I've done a very good job, I think, of presenting my professionalism. I have a background in sports journalism. I went to school for this. I've covered plenty of other things, and I bring my professional hat on every day when we go to the rink and everything else, that I do my job to, a high standard, and I don't let the emotions of knowing what I know about this team get in the way of that. So I just want to put that out front first, that I take my job very seriously. I have always taken my job very seriously, whether it's covering high school football, whether it's interviewing Olympians, whether it's being in these Ducks locker rooms, whether it's going to cover the Angels. I take this very seriously. This is my job. This is my career. It's my passion, is to be a sports reporter. That being said, why do we get into sports at all? Well, we were fans at some point. And I think I didn't just buy all these for the background here. I grew up going to Anaheim Ducks games. My family had season tickets from day one of the Ducks existing. I think there's, I can't really hide that. I know so much about this team because I have lived every beat of this franchise's history. And so I try to take that knowledge and passion into my reporting to give you insightful takes on this team and to have more well thought out opinions, because I'm not somebody that's just parachuting in and trying to get my clips in order. I said that this is about experience for me, but it's also something like I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't care about the product. The Angels are my other pro sports team, which, dealt with. I'm kind of baseball agnostic as of now. Like, I follow the Angels, but I cannot say that I'm currently rooting for them. I would like a lot of things to change over there. And you can hear all those opinions on our weekly Wings Over Catella podcast, or Wings on Catella podcast, where I bring my Ducks reporting, and we also have our Sporting Tribune Angels contingent that talks about what's going on. So big Angel news today, which we will talk about when we record later this week. Football is probably my second favorite sport, despite the Angels being in there. I didn't start following football until I was in high school, when I started playing football. And at the time, obviously no Rams, the Chargers were in San Diego still, and that still felt far away. We would go to Charger games, but I never had a connection down there. I became an Indianapolis Colts fan because I really liked the color blue. I liked their jerseys, and I liked Peyton Manning. And he was just, they were on the first game that I watched once I started playing football in high school. So I became a huge Colts fan through the Peyton Manning era. And then once Peyton left and I bought an Andrew Luck jersey, I was all in on that. But once the Rams came back, I made the decision that before that, if the Rams were ever to come back, because they were the team that played in Anaheim, that I would be a Rams fan. And sure enough, they came back, and I latched back on and got a Super Bowl out of it. So that's been fun. And they're looking pretty well right now. So, like I said, I played football in high school, youth basketball, youth baseball, lacrosse in high school, wrestling in high school. Never actually played hockey, despite all my wants. A lot of street hockey. Me and my buddy made a garage hockey league when we were kids. He was a Red Wings fan, and so you can imagine following the Ducks as a young kid and having a Red Wings fan down the street in the early, the late 90s. We got into it a few times, and that was always fun. But you see the stuff behind me every week when we do the show. I have a very robust Ducks jersey collection. It's something that's very important to me, and my family, included. My family are all still Ducks fans, and I see them every game. If you see me walking around the upper concourse, it's probably to go say hi to my family. But it instilled my love of sports going to Ducks games, and the knowledge of the team doesn't leave me. But again, I am a professional in doing this. No cheering in the press box, haven't yet. But I can't say that this season's not been fun. So, but again, taking it from a very professional lens, that I go day in and day out and do my job and try to bring the best coverage for you and everyone else watching at home. The last bit there from Checkson was that I did some play-by-play for high school hockey. It was for Long Beach State club hockey, and I covered some 88 HSHL for the Register back in the day. Is there any broadcast that I looked up to and tried to learn from to prepare for that role? I mean, it's the guys that are still there right now, and that I get the lucky ability to talk to every single day in Steve Carroll and John Allers. I can find my old Long Beach State broadcasts, and I incorporated the Steve Carroll shoots, scores. I don't think I brought a lot of the John Allers coast to coast like buttered toast or from the ladies' tees necessarily, but there are things that certainly slip in there. And hell, when I was doing the broadcast, I also was doing the public address announcing for the rink at the same time as doing the play-by-play. And did I fashion my goal calls after Phil Hewlett? You're absolutely right, I did. The rink there is tiny. It was in Lakewood Ice. We went on the road a couple times to see them play Fullerton. Very interesting setups. Like I said, for interesting stories, you're doing this radio broadcast to like 3 people that are a couple of the parents of these club hockey players while doing the in-arena PA announcing, while controlling the music that was playing in the arena, while also taking notes because I was writing stories for the website at the time. I've wanted to be a hockey media type for a very long time, since 7th grade, when I made we had a magazine project, and of course it was Southern California Sports, which just happened to be in the spring of 2003, which again, you can imagine was a pretty formative time as a young hockey watcher in Orange County. So, I've wanted to talk about myself a little bit here before. So thank you guys for asking those questions and allowing me to share a little bit. There's a reason that I try to make the connection with you, the fans out there that support this content, that go to these games. It's because not even just 2 years ago, I was very much like every one of you, wanting to know more about this team, wanting to get on, to get daily information, and knowing that it's a little information starved as a Southern California hockey fan, particularly a Ducks fan. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm taking my journalistic experience and applying it to this team that, formed my love of sports. And that's why I'm doing it here today, and why we're doing Ducks in Deep, and why I hope, if anyone is able, you can support on Patreon at patreon.com/Zach Cavanagh to, again, you can get your questions answered in these mailbags, but also just support my work as we continue to build this. And if you want to see me get on the road, I have some plans to get on the road in January. December's tough with the long East Coast swing. I'll go to the LA game because that's close, but true, long-term road coverage is not going to happen this month. But I'm looking forward to January and the rest of the season as we try to make this bigger and better. And, if the Ducks end up making the playoffs and we're able to fund some road coverage of those playoff games, whether from my superiors here at the Sporting Tribune or from contributions like the rest of you out there, again, you're not only are you funding a dream of mine, you're funding coverage that will benefit everyone in the long run when you're following this team. So that is the mailbag. Thank you everyone for sending in your questions. I look forward to doing this all again in January when we get back into the mailbag swing of things. But we're going to cut it here. We're getting ready for a 3-game homestand. It'd be 9 games of 11 that are at home. It's a big chunk here for the Ducks. After this homestand, they'll finally have more home games than road games, which will go away with the East Coast trip. But one way or another, it's a fun time to be covering the team, and it's great to have them at home right now to give you more in-depth coverage of this team. So again, that'll do it here for Ducks in Deep this week. Thank you to everyone that's listening right now on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Again, thanks to our friends at the Believe Network for helping the audio portion of this feed get out there. I know people that wanted some Spotify connectivity. Now you have it right into your feeds every week when these episodes get published. So please rate and review on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get those podcasts, to help us get higher up in people's feeds and get more people listening in and being part of this conversation here on Ducks in Deep. You can still subscribe to the Sporting Tribune on YouTube for the latest Ducks media sessions and new episodes of Ducks in Deep that will continue in video form, as you're seeing or listening to right now, every week on the Sporting Tribune YouTube. Look for my post-game recaps, my notebooks on the sportingtribune.com, and hopefully more features coming here week. I love writing features. I want to give more in-depth stories on the players themselves and some analysis stuff. I gotta say, this compacted schedule, really tough for the players. I'm not saying my job's harder than theirs, but it is tough to work in extra stuff when the schedule just hits practice game day after day. So want to get more out there for everybody. But please follow that all on The Sporting Tribune, at Sporting Trib on all social platforms, thesportingtribune.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Zach Cav. That's at ZACHCAV. And on TikTok and Blue Sky at Zach Cav Sports. Again, consider showing your support on Patreon at patreon.com/Zach Cavanagh to continue growing Ducks in Deep, to hopefully get me out on the road more, to fund all these other things. I'm trying to do more with this channel. I'm looking into more video content, more interviews, things to just, again, make this coverage bigger and better for everyone out there listening and watching at home in the Ducks community. Thankful for everyone out there that has already subscribed to the Patreon. Would be ever so grateful to anyone that continues to support as we get into the holidays. And if you're feeling giving, I would greatly appreciate that. Links for the Patreon and the travel fund are, again, in the description below. And that'll do it. So, again, 3 road games coming up here. We'll be right back at it on Wednesday against Utah. So until next time, see you at the rink.